So hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Blue Eyes and why they're still mid. So first off, the issue with Blue Eyes is simply put, you're playing Blue Eyes White Dragon, and this is obviously just not very good as a vanilla card. So if we look at Blue Eyes White Dragon, it's a pretty self-explanatory. It's a level 8 monster, and it's a monster without an effect in the year 2025. So if you open a Blue Eyes White Dragon in your hand, you cannot normal summon this, and the card does genuinely nothing by itself. So you would need at least one other card to do anything with Blue Eyes. So in which case, let's say if we have 2 copies of Blue Eyes in our deck, so if we're just looking at this, we have a 20% chance to open a Blue Eyes White Dragon, which is essentially 1 in 5, and this is about the minimum amount you should be playing, just 2 Blue Eyes White Dragons. So yeah, a little bit rough on that. If you're really like desperate on getting rid of garnets, I think 1 might be like borderline possible. It's just a little bit risky though, so there's that. And then after this, you still have quite a few garnets that you're playing in this deck actually. So you have True Light, you have Mausoleum, and then if you're also feeling it, you could technically play Ultimate Fusion as well. What I think might be mandatory would be Majesty, because you need the targets for wishes, and Majesty is just decent card overall. So there are some people I've seen playing about this many garnets. So we have Jet, which I'm struggling to find here. Okay, so we have playing around 6, and if you're playing Magia, you would play one additional one on top of this, needing some sort of chaos monster. So for the sake of this, we'll go with I guess it would be like Illusion of Chaos, and then you would have the ability to do like Illusion of Chaos to make Magia with the Ultimate Fusion. Like, sure. That would be doable. And I guess this technically also requires you to run Souls. Or not, I guess. I'm not 100% sure how you get access to Illusion of Chaos in this deck, but, you know, sure, that's like a thing you can technically do. But if we're playing a little bit more minimalistic, you normally would not play Jet or necessarily Ultimate Fusion, and you would just play Drill Beam as your more or less 5th Garnet. And Drill Beam, of course, is completely useless in hand. In the context of like, but what if I have just a singular Drill Beam in my hand and we pass turn? Is that going to do anything? No. Same with essentially Majesty, right? And of course, if we consider this from like a going first perspective, if of course we just set Drill Beam, it does nothing. If we just set Majesty and our like starters get negated, same kind of deal as Drill Beam, does nothing. Does this help insulate our plays going first? Not necessarily, right? If we open Drill Beam, normal summon Sage, Sage gets impermed, and we have no targets for our Link 1, then it does nothing. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, wait, this amount of garnets is wrong actually, because we didn't throw in Mausoleum. So we're at actually 6 garnets, I suppose, because you have to run all of these. Pretty much, right? So you have actually a higher than 50% chance to draw a garnet in every single hand that, well, you open. So whether you are going first or going second, you're essentially, if you're playing against a deck that doesn't run garnets like this, you're just playing in disadvantage. It's essentially playing at least 4 real cards versus your opponent's 5 real cards. If we look at it from that perspective, you're just in disadvantage innately from playing Blue Eyes. So we can demonstrate the draws by throwing in like just some random cards in the main. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we just need to get to 40 cards. Okay, and if we draw, we have technically a good hand because we didn't draw any of our garnets here. And then next hand, True Light. Next hand, we have Mausoleum of Light. Hand after this, we get nothing. And after this, another Mausoleum. Now we have Majesty, Blue Eyes White Dragon, True Light. Terrible hand, right? Because we would have 2 real-ish cards, right? So coincidentally though, if we do have like the Blue Eyes White Dragon in hand here, it kind of makes the True Light and Majesty of the White Dragon a little bit more useful here. So we have essentially we're going to assume that this could be 2 hand traps because this would be technically 3 engine, right? So the other expectation I would have is maybe like 1 engine and 1 non-engine, but we probably don't have good insulation here, so whatever the start is, it probably won't amount to much. So at best, we might have pop 1 or 2 with Majesty, and then we have True Light reborning Blue Eyes White Dragon, and that's about all we can do on our opponent's turn, unfortunately. So yeah, very, very epic indeed. And then if we go ahead, do another test hand, we have no garnets here. Do another test hand, no garnets here. But if you do the calc, you'll see it's around, I think, 58% or 60%, something like that. That would be the odds of drawing a garnet. So yeah, already off to a bad start. And then your starters are actually not as insane as you might think. So in terms of starters, Blue Eyes has some decent ones, but yeah, this issue. So the deck is by no means unplayable, right? But there is essentially a disadvantage of having to run essentially bad cards in your deck or cards that aren't as optimal as the cards your opponent would be playing. So consistency issue, basically. And then there is also technically the fact that I guess Blue Eyes does not have that high of a ceiling. So even if you draw like 5 cards in hand that are all engine, the best ones I think are basically just back row to open, right? So you have Drill Beam and Majesty, for example, would be decent cards to just open, or just like Primite Engine in general. The cards don't really search each other, right? So, well, to an extent, right? So your Blue Eyes cards do not go into your Primite cards. Your Primite cards can go into your Blue Eyes White Dragon, but not your Blue Eyes cards. Only the White Dragon, really. So, a little bit of anti-synergy there. And lack of synergy versus like some other decks. For example, if we were playing Therion, it has a somewhat similar-ish issue where if you're playing Therion Punk, your Therion cards don't really go into your Punk cards, but your Punk cards do at least go into your Therion cards. So this is a little bit worse in that regard. And there aren't really any ways to really go from any archetype to like the Primite cards. You would just have to hard open them. So that's just an issue of Primite being a little bit inefficient in that sort of way. So I mean, at worst, like let's assume your opponent has some disgusting floodgate, right? Where you could easily drill beam it and it would just be done with, and you could also drill beam their other floodgates. Issue, you just simply are not drawing the Primite cards, so you have no access to drill beam then. That or all of your Primite cards are getting negated, so no access to the Primite cards. So yeah, that's just a thing that could happen, right? And there's also the potential of not being able to put a Blue Eyes into either the graveyard or on the field, so there's no recycling of Ether Burl, and no Ether Burl means no recycling of Drill Beam. So A bit convoluted, but yeah, that's a thing, I guess. It gains like a basic stun though. You probably will be able to recycle Drill Beam and have a good chance to get access to the primate cards. But I mean, against a little bit of a different type of floodgate deck like Ritual Beast, we have dragons in our deck, don't we? Eschatos, declare dragon, because that was effective against Tenpai already anyways. This combo, yeah, that's not exactly what I would call fun. And you can also slap an Apollosa on that board. And you also have like Virtual Beast, Ulti, Raritari, and all that nonsense. So not that great in that regard either. And then, well, I guess we should finish talking about the going first of the deck. So your best end board essentially with just your Blue Eyes combo is to end on 2 Omni Negates, and then you can have an additional Drill Beam if you just happen to open it. And that's about it, right? So if we were to, at best, resolve against an opponent with no hand traps, it would be best 1-card combo is resolving. Well, it doesn't really matter, I think. If you open True Light, or not True Light Access with like the Maiden or Wishes to act as access the Sage. But yeah, it's about the same. So we do normal summon Sage. Sage will add us the Maiden. We can Maiden effect set True Light. True Light can set Wishes. Wishes can then grab us the second Sage. And then we can grab Effect Veiler off of second Sage. And we cycle through some cards here. And then we'll go into Spirit Dragon, which can tag out into Ultimate Spirit. And then Spirit is not hard once returned, so we can tag out again into Crimson. Crimson tags out into Sivir Divine. And then essentially you have just 2 Omni Negates, Effect Veiler, plus I believe Majesty of the White Dragons. Unless I am thinking wrong here. Let's see. Well, actually, no, it depends. Can you do that as a 1 card? That much? Let's calc real quick. Okay. Spirit, special summon Blue Eyes, White Dragon, trigger Maiden. So then normal summon Sage with Eyes of Blue. How do we get the second Blue Eyes? Okay, so it seems like you can't search for Majesty with Wishes here, because if you do, then you wouldn't be able to. Okay, so 3 interruptions essentially. They're decent quality, being 2 Omni Negates, but with an Omni Negate like this, and well, I guess it's faster to show not tell. So with Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon, the issue somewhat with this card is when a card or effect is activated on the field, quick effect, you negate the activation, and if you do, this card gains 1000 attack until the end of the turn. So this effect here, the actual negate on Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon isn't that good of a negate. So if I were trying to resolve, for example, Eldlick, this does nothing versus Eldlick. This cannot even respond to Eldlick because it's activating in hand, right? And then it would not destroy whatever's activating. So if I were to do, for example, normal summon Rosin, I still have Rosin after you were to, if you were to negate with the Spirit Dragon. So it's not really a big deal. So yeah, that's the issue with Spirit Dragon right there. And then if we were to look for Seifer, which I spelled correctly this time. Let's see. Once return when your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can negate that effect and if you destroy 1 card on the field. Well, this is not an Omni Negate. This is actually a monster negate, so yeah. This would be able to technically negate an Eldlick in hand and then destroy air. So this destroy effect, it depends on if your opponent has any targets at time of activation. So if we were to just normal summon Rosin, sure, you could destroy Rosin when I normal summon Rosin, but let's say I have a monster that tributes itself for cost, like the Lotus, then you don't really have anything to destroy with the Seifer. Not that like destroying the Lotus would do that much for you anyways. And yeah, it's not that great. But instead of Sifter Divine, if you were to wait a turn, I guess you could have Cosmic Blazer instead, which is a more legit Omni Negate that just destroys and negates, right? So could be a little bit better in that regard. And this also makes you extremely weak to Nibiru, just, yeah. This takes way more than 5 summons to get to the Sifter Divine. So there's that. I guess technically though, wait, yeah, you have to go into Sifter Divine after the Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon. Because of how Crimson works, you can't tag out from Spirit into Sifter Divine. So yeah, it must be synchro summoned, which Spirit is not doing. So yeah, that's kind of awkward there. And if we think about this end board, you're essentially just ending on, I guess, Effect Valor and 2 kind of negates, right? In terms of just a combo that does that, we have a lot of those. So we have Centurion. If you just activate the field spell, then yeah, you can slap on 2 actual Omni negates onto your end board. So there are 2 different Omnis that you can realistically go for right now. So we could do draw 2 with Atri, I believe, and still end on like True Awakening plus tag out into Cosmic Blazer next turn. I believe that's doable. You can also end on one Cosmic Blazer and then summon another Cosmic Blazer on turn 2 and get 2 draws with Atri, I believe. So that would be potential hand trap. I mean, there's a guaranteed hand trap here, but there's potential hand trap. Then you have Omni negates. And the amount of Garnets you run in this deck are going to be just less in general than Blue Eyes. So you have that advantage with 6 whole Garnets here versus I believe it would be like 2, I think, in Centurion. Unless you're also counting potentially Wake Up. I mean, Gargoyle, I believe, is fine to open. It's actually not the worst thing in the world. Their usage is you can get out this card. And that technically, if you are running True Awakening, you would probably also be running Emeth because of how the card works. But yeah, still not completely terrible to open a lot of these cards, just in general. And also, I guess it's basically very similar to what Blue Eyes is doing here, but you don't have to run these vanillas, which means you're not playing Primite with Centurion, I guess, because you're not running random vanillas. So that's kind of a plus, kind of a minus, depending on your perspective. And the hand trap resilience of these decks are about the same. Like, these starters, you just have to trade essentially 1 for 1 on. So Sage is your only normal summon, and you can get to Sage with Wishes, or you can get to Maiden there, and you can also continue off of just the Maiden. So Wishes also gets into Maiden, which means if you were to completely shut down Sage with Eyes of Blue with, let's say, for example, a Cyframe Gear Gamma, there is still somewhat combo after that, and your opponent is still able to play. Centurion is also kind of like that in the same kind of way. But in terms of just like hand trap resilience, Centurion is ridiculous against all the draw cards. So the Molcharmies, Maxi, it's very much more resistant. And I mean, you are really just slapping at best, if we're considering the 1 card combos here, 2 Omni negates, and that's it. So Centurion is also in the same camp, but you know what? There's a deck that is a bunch of 1 card combos, and it just slaps like a bajillion Omni negates of a lot more variety than this. And the answer to this would be Super Heavy Samurai, and you're able to also potentially search reframing if you're willing to run like one Garnet. Or I guess you don't even have to search the reframing if you hard open it, so it's not even that bad of a Garnet. You can probably just make a bigger Apollosa or something, unless you were already making like a format Apollosa off of one card combo, which you might have been doing. Like honestly. But in terms of Omni Negates, what Omni Negates do we have again? It's like Warlord Savage, Baron de Fleur, Arian Regulus, Apollosa, and then you have like reframing in the back row, and that would be like a one card combo with Super Heavy Samurai, putting us at enough Omni Negates to negate essentially your whole hand, and also the Apollosa, which is just epic. And also, your plays are all insulated by an early Baron, so that's like a billion times harder to deal with than Blue Eyes. Going second ability wise, now if we were to look at that, what does Blue Eyes really do here? Considering like the floor on Blue Eyes, I don't think is that insane. You just happen to open like not that much engine, and that would be your play against like a maxi. So like let's say I normal summon Blue Eyes or Sage with Eyes of Blue, I would probably just go Sage effect to add Maiden, grab True Light can grab Wishes, or it can set like a Majesty, and I would simply have a Blue Eyes White Dragon in hand with a Drill Beam, and then I would set Drill Beam, and then have like another hand trap like Ash Blossom, Effect Veiler, Maxi, Imperm, Purge, whatever in hand, and then I would use them. That's like the play you would have essentially against like a Result Maxi type deal, right? So that's your play. If we were to just look at the play with just the Sage, but what do we do exactly with Sage? I guess the minimum we can do is go into the Link one, send a Blue Eyes White Dragon, and then have True Light set the Majesty. That's about all we can do, right? Really, in terms of minimalistic plays, that's just giving our opponent essentially an upstart, passing our turn. And our next point where we can add interruption, I believe, would be if we were to instead grab Wishes, normal summon another Sage. I think that's doable, but that risks us getting ashed and then having no interruption afterwards. But yeah, we could do that, and then we can grab Effect Veiler, and also technically a Majesty, which we could technically have done before as well. And I'm not 100% sure if that is optimal. I guess we could just straight up Wishes to do this instead of normal summoning a second Sage. Maybe that is better to do actually, to not grab the Sage and leave it like in deck so we have search targets later. Maybe, right? Well, whatever the case, it's just not that insane. It is literally just one interaction. So if we have, for example, Unchained instead, Unchained has something a little bit better, but only if you open a specific hand. So if we have back row plus Rikea, we can do Rikea effect to pop. And then when we special summon a guy here, we give two draws for Maxi or Fuelos. We can then make Unchained Soul of Rage, which is going to be 3 interruptions here. So the difference between this is that, well, not much really. It's about the same, honestly. But, you know, here we would have, I guess it would be Effect Veiler plus Majesty, which isn't that great, honestly. And then we have, instead of that, we would have, I guess, Link Off Monster plus, I guess, actually, wait, no, it's not 3 interruption, is it? Wait, is it 3? Yeah, it is 3, okay. So Link Off for SP, SP Banish, SP Other Banish, 3 interruptions. And then this is about the same in terms of like interruptions. It's not that far off. Okay. So we've looked at like the ceiling, we looked at the floor, and now, yeah, the deck, it's just really popular, I'd say, rather than being very strong. It's very played, and it's not like insanely broken or anything. So if we were to instead look at a few other deck lists, we'd be able to very clearly see how Blue Eyes is kind of just mid. And if we also consider the going second ability of Blue Eyes, well, here's the thing we could do against Blue Eyes pretty simply. Yo, what if I'm playing a trap deck and I just set 5 and pass? Well, your hand traps kind of just all useless, right? And then the only worthwhile card that I have to worry about now is just Drill Beam and potential Drill Beam access, which, not really that worried about anything else because I should be able to shut down all your other plays with 5 set back row. So if you just don't open Drill Beam, I think I'm, for the most part, just pretty chillin'. And even if you do open Drill Beam, we could still be chillin' pretty hard. Like, an Ice Dragon's Prison is pretty killer against this deck. So, not going to be that upset regardless of what happens. We have a lot of just options in general. Like, we could IDP Maiden, banish Maiden with the on-field potentially Sage with Eyes of Blue, depending on sequencing. We could banish Blue Eyes White Dragon plus Link 1, and that would be just something we could do, but without too much of an issue. And being non-targeting, IDP is pretty damn efficient, honestly. The one annoying thing I guess worth mentioning about Blue Eyes is specifically how you can't really called by against Blue Eyes if they set up with Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon. But I mean, like, Ash Blossom Just Spring would still work if you were to have like a second Ash Blossom or top deck Ash Blossom. You could still Blossom Maxi and that type of thing, but it's not really that important because how many cards? Well, I guess with Blue Eyes specifically, Maxi is more annoying. If you really think about it, Maxi, a lot of decks are only able to run so much non-engine. So in terms of interruptions, if you are specifically going first, the maximum amount of interruptions you could draw for the most part, I think, would be one of your 3 Ash Blossoms and your 3 of Imperm, putting us at technically like 4 interruptions. But if you were going second, Imperm is not activatable. But I guess there's potential that you were running 3 Effect Feller. It kind of depends, right? But if you're only running the 1, then it's just 2 interruptions. So we have Ash Blossom, and then 1 of Effect Feller activatable. All of your Imperms are not activatable, but I guess there's also Purge. So generously, I'd say like 3, 4 interruptions still. But they're not like necessarily all going to be activatable at once because you do have to specifically draw into these cards, which could take some time. So still annoying, but not like completely impossible to deal with. But if you were to just drop like an Ash Blossom, not being able to negate that immediately, somewhat annoying as well. But all right. After looking at all of this, now going second, how do we deal with a deck going second? Does our engine do anything? So unfortunately, the engine here is actually pretty terrible going second. So going first, it's pretty acceptable, right? But in terms of going second, yeah, it really falls off a cliff here. So if we look at Sage with Eyes of Blue and Maiden, if we were just against literally just a single Apollosa, well, Sage with Eyes of Blue, you wouldn't be able to beat over Apollosa, but a lot of the decks that can make Apollosa now, we don't even care about you trying to beat over Apollosa because there's inherently just a way to play around it. So with Snake Eyes, you have Link Revo. With Yubel, you have Nightmare Pain. So we're going to go under the assumption that you're against a Yubel board with Varudris and Apollosa and also Nightmare Pain and Phantom, right? So the goal right now is just to play through the Apollosa negates, okay? So we have normal summon Sage with Eyes of Blue. So we can just allow this to search Maiden, because it genuinely does not matter. If you search Effect Filler, it's not going to do anything. So we can just let Sage with Eyes of Blue resolve. Cool. And then if you try Resolve Maiden for True Light, we'll negate that, and that's done with. And then if you were to attempt to use the Link 1 effect to summon, we can negate that as well. So yeah, here's the points where we're negating. Maiden effect, Link 1 effect, and then in case it does come up, we have a Maiden Reborn effect, which we can also negate. And then if you were to have Ether Burl, we will be able to negate that as well. So that's our 4 Apollousa negates against Blue Eyes. And off of that, it means you're essentially unable to resolve a single one of your monster effects, so you just have to hard open the correct spells to be able to maybe somewhat play a little bit. And also considering Drill Beam here will not be actually able to resolve against this end board, you have nothing, 0 options you can do here. And just for example, if I wanted to, we could do a similar thing with Memento, where I'm not saying this is like the best Memento on board, but we're going to do like essentially the full Memento combo, and we're going to do it like pre-support, and that'll end on just combine creation, and then we'll be able to set a Cranium Burst, which prevents you from attacking to Apollousa essentially. And we're not even going to activate the Cranium Burst, and we're just going to use the Fiendsmith cards to set up a 4 or 3 mana Apollousa. And against just this board, and assuming I'm only activating the Apollousa, if you do not draw infinite impermanence, you're essentially just not going to be playing. That's what we're looking at here, really. And if we were to, of course, have like an Omni Negate, or if we were to be setting up our board, you would have already thrown out your Imperm, unless you held it for turn, which very unlikely. Then in that case, it would be top decked Imperm. So odds of top decking Imperm, but we'll just say very low, not reliable, not something you should be relying on to beat your opponent's deck consistently. So without even using the Cranium Burst negates, because this has technically 5 negates on it as well, you're not getting through an Apollousa. Just plain and simple, a single Apollousa, you can't beat it. That's the current state of the deck, and there are a good amount of decks that just can't beat Apollousa. Like Memento itself would struggle against a single Apollousa. And if we had Apollousa plus like an Ash Blossom, that's like pretty much just completely unplayable. So great. Yep, unplayable, all right. And yeah, that's Blue Eyes in a nutshell. It's just incredibly mid. Like, it's not so terribly bad that you can't play it, right? And it's not so terribly bad that you would like consistently lose on the rank ladder just for playing it, right? But if we think about it as being necessarily like the best deck, it's not going to be the best deck, but it has insanely high representation because I guess a lot of people like Blue Eyes, and you know, Blue Eyes support. This is the first support Blue Eyes has gone in a long time, and there's also Primite releasing, so you know, now that Primite is here, it's just a very popular deck. Whether it's like very strong or not, I think it's clear to say it's not like broken. Is it like necessarily as strong as, for example, Snake Eyes, Tearlament, Full Power, Yubel? I'd say, not really. Against like Max C, your plays aren't that much better than, let's say, a Yubel. Not really by much, at least anyways. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.